Alabama's legislature appears poised to do something very, very radical to make sure that black voters in Alabama cannot elect representatives of their choice. You may have heard the Supreme Court of the United States. This may have crossed your radar. The Supreme Court of the United States, you might know, right now is a very conservative body. A 6-3 hard right conservative majority on the nation's highest court as we speak. But even so, even that hardline conservative 6-3 court could not swallow the recent decision by Alabama's legislature to draw up congressional districts in that state. So there's only one black majority district in the whole state, in a state where a quarter of the population is black. The High Court ordered the state of Alabama to make a new map where there are 2 such districts where black voters might be able to elect a representative of their choice. They have been ordered to do this by the federal courts. Alabama is refusing to do it, even though Alabama technically is a state in the United States of America, which is a country that is technically subject to the rulings of the Supreme Court of the United States. Even the Alabama parts of the United States are subject to federal court orders. But apparently they're deciding on this issue that they maybe don't want to be. Alabama deciding it just might not follow federal court orders when it comes to black people voting in 2023. It's not like a rascally little tantrum that Alabama is throwing here. This is the whole point of the country kind of stuff. This is as serious as it gets. I mean, defying federal court orders, to state the obvious, that is a fast drive down a short road for any country. And any state in the Deep South, any state that, say, seceded during the Civil War, is very, very well aware of that. They are very well aware of how radical this is. But of course, it's even more resonant, it's even more incendiary to do it right now, because Governor Slavery was not that bad DeSantis really does not look like he's going to go the distance in the Republican nominating contest. He's just running a terrible, terrible campaign that's sort of getting worse and more expensive by the day. He seems to be the only person who ever had a prayer of being within shooting distance, proverbial shooting distance, forgive me, of the Republican frontrunner. I mean, the Republican Party really does look poised to renominate its frontrunner, to renominate the candidate who is dominating all their presidential polling by 20, 30, 40 points. And if nobody can get anywhere near him, if they do renominate Donald Trump as their candidate for president, that means the whole campaign for president, the whole election for president of the United States over the course of this next year is going to be, in large part, a referendum on this question of whether we follow court orders anymore as a country, whether the legal system binds us, whether it binds all of us. Because the likely Republican nominee for president, as things are going, the prohibitive favorite to be the Republican nominee for president, he is facing a trial in October on a $250 million civil fraud case brought by the New York Attorney General, then another civil trial in January on defamation claims related to sexual assault allegations against him, then another civil trial later in January on a multi-million-dollar civil fraud case related to an alleged pyramid scheme type thing that he was involved in, then a criminal trial in March on the New York State hush money charges, then a federal criminal trial in May on his federal felony criminal indictment for his handling of classified documents, and meanwhile, we're waiting on news of additional potential criminal indictments of him personally, both at the federal level and in the state of Georgia, related to his efforts to overthrow the government and stay in power after he lost re-election. So if that's the, personal schedule of the Republican Party nominee for president, A, busy, and B, the election is going to be about this. It's going to be the referendum question posed both implicitly and explicitly by his candidacy. Do we choose him or do we choose law? Do we choose the law? Does the law apply to us all? Does it protect us all? Does it constrain us all? Or do we want this guy instead? And all of the myriad things he has to offer.